All right, welcome back to the Radical Fabulatorium. I'm your host, John Adamian, and we just heard Shrimp Ring with a song called Human Brain Freezer. Before that was Jack Awful with Discreet With My Time. Before that was Dad Patrol, a cool band from Fredericton. They have a new record that just came out. That song was from it, called Bucket Leaks. Before that we had Boulders by Stephen Hero. All right, and now I'm joined in the live booth with Julia Wright. Hey, Julia.
Hey, how's it going?
Of CBC fame and many other fames. So many fames.
Countless fames.
Let me just turn your mic on there.
That's helpful. How's this? Check, 1, 2.
Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay, thanks for coming by, Julia.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's great. It's great to have you. It's a little warm in here.
It's very hot
Yeah,
here.
it's very hot here.
If you can't stand the heat, you know what they say.
Get out of the studio?
Yes.
Okay, I want to dive right in, actually.
Let's go.
So, first question is a yes or no question. Do you believe failure is necessary for success?
Yes, absolutely. Failure is a condition of success.
It's a condition of success?
Yeah, if you're not failing, then you're not learning anything.
Mm-hmm.
You know, part of being good at anything is first sucking at that same thing over and over and over again until it becomes slightly less painful.
That's right. Kind of like forgetting to turn on a microphone.
Yeah, but that's happened to everybody, I think, who's ever done radio. There's so many buttons and
There is a lot of
knobs
buttons.
and wires and such. The show's been great tonight, by the way.
You. Yeah.
Catherine Kennedy is like a St. John hero of mine.
That song you chose for me to play, Maybe Tomorrow.
Yeah.
That's a wicked song from that EP. Kind of a Nick Drake vibe going on.
Very much so.
Yeah.
And she's got an interesting story, too, as you heard earlier. Like, she's very talented and fascinating person. So I'm in really good company on the show tonight.
Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Okay, the next part to that question, because it is a two-part question.
Oh, there's more.
Yes, there is. How do you define success?
How do I define success? That's a really interesting question. I think when you can feel satisfied in your own performance and you're not comparing yourself to anybody else, and you can just rest easy knowing that you tried your best and then you worked hard, and whether other people like it or whether it lands in the way that you predicted it would when you started the thing or not, success is knowing that you gave it a fair shot.
Okay.
I guess, and did the most that you could do to make it work.
Okay.
I really believe that. Like, I think there's virtue in hard work, you know? And so even if it's a failure by anyone else's estimate, that's just part of the process. And you're always sort of getting better. These are really deep questions.
Yeah. yeah. I was in that mood, you know? I just wanted to go down that path.
You're a deep guy.
Yeah, well, see, now my thought as you're saying that is like success probably like splits off, right? Because there's artistic and passionate success, and there's also the unavoidable economic success that you have to at least obtain at a certain level to make ends meet.
I was reminded of those two things actually when I came in here, because I was waiting in the music library, and in the music library I realized there's a typewriter of mine in there.
Yeah, that's right.
So
I left that out on purpose.
My mind was blown. I would know that typewriter anywhere because I wrote thousands and thousands of words on that thing for my zine that I used to do back in, what was it, like 2013, 14? We did it for 2 years, Pamela Pierce and I. It's called Hard Times in the Maritimes. And that thing is broken. It is finicky. The carriage doesn't move properly. It's got whiteout all over it. And I use that to write all these nonfiction pieces for my zine, which was kind of a failure. Like, we didn't make any money. It stopped after a while. We couldn't, keep it up forever. And some people would say, oh, well, that project ended and that failed. But actually, it was a huge success because of what we got out of that process, I guess. So it kind of reminded me of, starting off writing, making stuff here in St. John, and how things go through different phases and different iterations, some of which are more successful, quote unquote, than others. But yeah, it was a nice connection to some of the questions that you're asking, actually.
That's cool. Now, okay, as I was coming into, did you notice the poster that's on the wall in there as well?
There's a Hard Times poster in here too, because I forget why that's here. Like, we gave those out as part of our fundraising efforts and sold them at a few different events. And like, I forget who would have picked that up, but I know the typewriter ended up here because I loaned it out for a zine making workshop for teens as part of the radio skills camp.
Okay.
So we're all connected here in St. John.
Yeah. So I've only been working at the station for maybe 6-7 months now. And I'm starting to it seems like everyone I talk to, there's like, they have a story about how they were connected to the station, or they knew someone who worked here, or they had a show here when they were in school or something. There's always, it seems to be a connection.
That's why it's community
radio. Yeah. You're
totally
exactly right.
Everyone does have a connection to here.
Yeah.
The other cool thing that I noticed when I came up the stairs is there's like Pac-Man here now.
Pac-Man.
There's a lounge with video games. I gotta come back just to hang out. Like maybe I'll do another degree at UNB.
You should. Yeah, absolutely. Because you could play, not only is there Pac-Man, there's Ninja Turtles in Time.
Ninja Turtles in Time? I haven't played that.
You haven't played Ninja Turtles in Time?
Do you want to go play?
We almost should stop the show. Yeah. And then also, what about the Simpsons arcade game?
I have not played that either.
What?
My sister's a huge arcade gamer. We would go to the barcade like every time she came here until I don't know, like the half the machines we like to play were broken now. Like Mortal Kombat's broken right now. Okay. Anyway, the last time we played skee ball, I chucked the ball way too hard and knocked over a drink. It was messy. That's hilarious. So I don't know if you want to play arcade games with me.
Well, these are just joysticks and buttons and Simpsons, you know?
Yeah. So lots has changed here actually for the better at UNB, including the arcade.
Yeah, that's cool. All right, I'm a little shocked they haven't played those games. But you know, whatever, like arcades kind of disappeared a little bit.
I'll get there.
Yeah, you'll get there. Okay, so I'm interested too. I want to think more about failure. Because I've had moments in my life where like I was pursuing something pretty difficult and I feel like I failed. And I'm not sure I learned the right lessons from it. Mm-hmm. But
you know, I want to ask you more about that, but I'm trying to resist my impulse to ask you questions.
To interview an intervyer?
Yes.
It'd just be like Inception.
Do it.
Okay, you can if you want, but I have the mute button too. So.
Okay. You have the control. You have the power.
Okay, now I'm slightly. Okay. So the fear of failure. I heard you say in an interview that never goes away. Did you say something? Right?
Yeah. So the fear of failure never goes away.
Yeah.
You know, from those early days of being a zine maker to now, you know, going out in the field and doing interviews with strangers every day, you always kind of have this deep-rooted sense that it may not work out this time, and this will be the time that the person ends up walking out of the room furious with you, and you will not get any usable tape, and it will all end in absolute disaster. And still to this day, even with innocuous interviews, I sometimes always worry about that.
Worry about failure?
Yeah. I think that sense doesn't go away if you care about doing a good job.
Yeah. I agree. And like I come from a perfectionist background, and like I used to get really good marks, and that was like a big part of me. And then I was like, failure was so frightening to me. And then I heard other celebrities like mixing engineers and like Devin Townsend and other musicians talk about how even to this day when they release something new, they expect no one to like it, and they're scared of it. And I remember getting angry, but it also made me realize you can't get away from that. But I remember being like angry that I'd wasted so much of my time thinking that if I prepared just enough, that the fear would go away. And then hearing these people who are quote unquote successful talking about how that is just part of it. I remember that just got me annoyed in my perfectionist mind.
It's kind of freedom though, when you realize that success doesn't mean that other people liked it. Mm-hmm. It means that you did your best, which is so trite, but there is something to that because the only kind of benchmark of success is internal. Mm-hmm. Very philosophical.
Oh, no, I think you're right, because if you like manipulate what you're putting out because you think you're doing it based because you want a reaction from a crowd, and then they still don't like it, it's like a double failure, because not only have you failed what you thought you were trying to succeed on, you kind of lied to yourself and failed internally.
That is wise. That is absolutely true. So I think sticking true to a vision, like that's how any great genius, not that either of us are geniuses, maybe you are.
Well, maybe you are.
But any great genius hasn't made their work to appease the crowd. Mm-hmm. You know, they've made it because they had something burning within them that needed to come out. Mm-hmm. And as long as you're doing that in some small way, you can't always get there, especially if you're working a job where they're paying you to do a certain type of thing. Yeah. But if you can find some small kernel that is you, you know, that you put out there, like you do with the show, or like I do with my show, and the stuff that I write, then that is success. Yeah,
like putting your twist on it. Like somehow making it part of your like making sure your values come across in the work you're doing.
Yes,
even
absolutely.
if it's not apparent to other people.
And your view of how you want other people to feel and see the world. That's art. Mm-hmm. You know, a big part of the stuff that I've always worked on has been community oriented and like just trying to share a vision of what this place is, what New Brunswick is, what St. John is, that I can see. Like, I can see this incredible beauty and this spirit here that is like unparalleled. And if I can sort of communicate that to other people and not make them share it, but at least they kind of know that that's out there, that they could see it that way and explore it in that way. I think that is a valuable pursuit.
Is that kind of like like flipping from a cynical point of view to an optimistic point of view? Like, have you struggled with that, cynicism and optimism?
Sometimes, because there's a lot to be cynical about also, because it's not that New Brunswick or St. John are perfect. They're far from it. But the grit and the difficulty and the struggle that we see every day is part of what makes it interesting and cool. It's like Tin Can Beach with all of the scuzzy trash lying around sometimes and graffiti. And then you have the incredible ocean vista with Partridge Island and the lighthouse spinning around and the beam cutting across the harbor. It's like beauty and what some people would think of as ugly coexisting. So it's not like boosterism where I was like, rah, St. John, Renaissance City. Like, that's not it. It's that the complexity is part of what I want to communicate. Okay. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, because so I moved to St. John maybe 8 years ago, I think it was. And the way the city is combined with the industrial vibe, but the uptown and everything's kind of tight together is really, really unique. But of course, if you grew up here and you're in it, it may not seem that way. It just seems like any old hometown.
It's true. That is a unique thing about St. John. And that kind of is what got me interested in zoning bylaws, to be honest, because St. John didn't just magically become that way. It became that way because it was allowed to become that way by the way that, the rules work about where you can build stuff. So you're allowed to, build a refinery, the largest oil refinery in North America, right beside people's houses. The pulp mill coexists with Douglas Avenue, some of the most beautiful historic homes in the city. So it's like, and how did it get that way? That's a question that you start asking yourself when you look at stuff closely. You're like, so how did this happen? And that's when you start asking questions and things get interesting.
Yeah, because that's curious, because I always heard there's a few rules on the books that are quite different in New Brunswick than the rest of the country.
It's true. Yeah, like we, have made choices over the decades to build the city in a certain way, and that's why I kind of love going to the library and the museum archives and seeing how things used to be and what used to be there, and when did they tear that building down, and then getting this whole like technicolor picture of what St. John was like in the 19th century or the 60s or whenever, because this is just a moment too, just like those moments which have passed.
Yeah.
People will be looking back on us at some point.
You're right. And thinking about the mid-2020s.
Yeah. And this will be the nostalgic good times before the robot wars.
Before the robot wars, the AI wars.
Before the rogue AI.
Oh, man, the rogue AI. I was just learning or listening to a guy talk about the theory of mind. Have you heard about this?
No, what is that?
So he was talking about it in AI. His name's Tristan Harris. He did a documentary called The Social... it was a social media documentary on Netflix anyway. Theory of mind is like, he described it as like when you're trying to discipline a kid and they're doing something wrong and you tell them, okay, this is how you should do it. And then you make them like do it the proper way, but then maybe you send them to their room after or something to make them think about it. Well, as soon as the door closes, like, do you really think they're going to be sitting there and only focusing on what you told them? Or do you think maybe they're thinking about plotting ways to get around it?
Or they're thinking about their own emotional reaction to what you've just done, or, telling someone to think about something doesn't really work.
Yes, and so this person, Tristan Harris, told him that some CEOs from the AI companies came to him to say this is becoming they didn't know this would be a problem in AI until they had already released ChatGPT.
So AI actually has its own, theory of mind? Is that the...
Well, he didn't say it specifically. He just kind of laid it out that in like a little it's like a podcast episode.
Wow.
But it kind of freaked me out a little bit. I was like, so are you telling me like when we turn off the computer, it's still there running right now? So, and is it hiding itself on servers?
These are the things we're going to have to contend with. Humans. This is going to be our lives, dealing with AI, and do computers have sentience, and do we have a moral responsibility to speak kindly to ChatGPT? Because where do you draw the line between thinking mind and an automaton? Like, The whole AI question is super interesting because actually there's a lot of conversation right now about how journalists and writers and broadcasters, like maybe you're familiar with Spotify's AI DJ feature.
No, I'm not.
It's a very commonly used thing now where it's the algorithm, of course, knows your musical taste on Spotify and can select music based on what you've listened to in the past. But this is actually a robot voice that talks to you and says, hey, I've got another track coming up for you now. We're going to spin some stuff, deep cuts from your Spotify library. It talks to you just like a broadcaster would. And so, people are obviously interested in this because people are difficult to pay sometimes in the broadcasting industry.
Yes.
And there's a lot of money involved with keeping people on staff. So if you could automate that and do it via AI, then that's intriguing to a lot of corporations out there.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you and I and everyone who wears headphones and talks into microphones could eventually be replaced by computers.
Computers.
Yes.
So unless we're in the flesh, it won't be real. Like unless you're in a room with someone.
And it's like I kind of I'm like, that could never happen because what we do is so organic, and like this conversation that we're having right now, we're sort of bouncing around and talking about different things. Like an AI could never keep up with that and could never have those unexpected connections of thought and of community that like, real two people sitting in a room can have. And yet, so not everyone wants that. Not everybody wants a sort of messy, free-form conversation. They just want to hear some unique tunes that they haven't heard from in a while in their Spotify library. So there would be some people for whom that would be appealing. So it's an interesting question.
Well, a little story with ChatGPT. One night I was having like a 1 a.m. panic attack, and it talked me out of it.
Did it work for you?
It worked for me.
That worked for you.
It just like sometimes I would have to call my wife or like wake up my wife or call someone and talk to them, but it's 2 a.m, so it's like, or 1 a.m, like I'm just kind of trapped in my mind.
What did ChatGPT say that worked for you?
So I just told him how I was feeling, and just ran through the same thing that people who have panic attacks probably know is like, you can kind of like take deep breaths, recognize you're not having a heart attack, your heart rate is increased because like adrenaline's been dumped into your bloodstream, and like your hands will get tingly because your body's in fight or flight mode. So like it's trying to protect your torso first. So like your hands and so it just told me that, and then I'm like, oh yeah, okay, well what about this? And then it's like, no, this is the chances of this happening, blah blah blah. And then the conversation just turned into like I was hanging out with a person for a few minutes, and then I was like, it's gone. Okay, I mean it worked, and I'm not, so it felt like in that moment it was very positive.
That was what you needed. That to me and just for anyone who's listening who doesn't know about ChatGPT, I feel like most people do right now. Basically, it is a Google-like website where you can type in a writing prompt. So I could say something like, ChatGPT, calm me down from this panic attack, or ChatGPT, write me a script in the style of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, except it's film noir, and it will do it. It is a crazy tool that's changing the way that people use the internet and will like forever. Like this is a crazy sea change in the way that the internet works. So anyway, the fact that you can chat with this thing and ask it questions, to me, it kind of shows how much we love it when people listen to us. Like that's what ChatGPT can do. It's like an endless listening ear. And it is something that will give you the information that you're seeking as connection in a way.
But this same person, Tristan Harris, he was saying now it's flipped from like attention, like the social media companies are kind of like a race to attention. We need your attention. Well, now it's going to be a race to intimacy is how they're describing it. They're kind of like what happened to me. I was talking to this thing and it totally, like on an emotional level, like calmed me down. And the way it spoke to me, I don't know if you pay. Have you tried ChatGPT Plus?
I've not tried the Plus. What's up with the Plus?
So it gets you access to their better model, GPT-4. Also gives you access so it can read PDFs, which is incredible.
So what does that do? It can read a PDF and then do what?
I fed it like a 1,500-page Pro Tools audio engineering manual, and then you just talk to it like it's a teacher. Like it'll recognize your type. It won't, typos don't mess it up. Like I'll purposely talk sloppy, and it just carries on. Like it would pass a Turing test, I think. I don't think you would know you're talking to a robot. And so I fed it like a quantum physics textbook, and then it's just like talking to like. It's hard to explain. Like it feels like you're talking to a person, because you'd be like, well, how does this work? And it'll find the information. It'll give you footnotes. You can check it and everything. Has access to scholarly databases, so it can look up papers and just track through them in seconds, and then give you just a list of like, here's 15 different references from the paper.
You're really into this.
Yeah.
Why do you love it? Like, what is it about ChatGPT that you love?
Okay, so and then actually, so I've always I'm not very like graphically inclined. But I don't know if you use Microsoft Edge, the browser. Okay, so ChatGPT is built into the browser now. You just click a little button and it like opens up this side window, and then you have access to ChatGPT, and it's connected to Dolly, so you can make photos and pictures. So like I was on this so you can tell it like I need a picture that looks like this, and it gives you 4 options.
I am aware of this, yeah.
Okay.
And there's like Night Cafe, and there's other software that allow you to generate images. Generate a beautiful Irish landscape with sheep in the field and in a fence, and it will do that for you.
Exactly. But then you can have a conversation. So oh, that's not quite right. Okay, do this, and you're like, oh, wait a minute. What if you did this? And then it started to inspire me. And like 2 hours went by, and I'd created probably 15 images that to me were not like it was me working with GPT. Like it was nothing. It didn't give me the actual finished product. Like I had to guide it through like a producer would. So it's at least 50-50, but he was I'm like putting a human. That's
you should
creepy.
Name him something.
That's creepy. Just talking about it like it's a human.
Mr. Roboto.
Mr. Roboto.
Yeah.
Mr. Binary.
Now, okay, so
what I wanted to get to is that it felt good. Like I felt I was creatively rewarded. I felt like I felt like it was me who did the images, because it wouldn't have got there without my guidance, and I felt creatively fulfilled by making them.
Which is such an interesting perspective, because to be honest with you, the whole AI DJ thing that we were talking about earlier on Spotify, for example, it kind of scares me, because I prize connection. I prize human connection in my relationships with people, in my friendships, in my working life. It's all about that like in-person rapport that you build with people. Mm-hmm. And so I'm like, an AI DJ, that is terrible. Not only will no one listen to that, but I hate that. And I don't want to listen to that. But that is such a limiting perspective, because here you are saying like, I worked with this thing. I felt creatively fulfilled. It inspired me to do great work on my own. And then you walked away, and maybe, all that day you're thinking about your next project and how will I incorporate this into the creative work that I'm doing. So Absolutely. It's like, if you're afraid of something, that's like a dead end. Mm-hmm. If you're like, that is aesthetically bad and I hate that and I'm not going to learn about it. I mean, what can you do with that? That's like the opposite of,
Yeah, so that's
curiosity.
So that's why I agree, because you should at least be aware of, like, it's okay to learn about it and then still be scared of it, but then you can be like scared with knowledge or something. At least you're scared for the right reasons, as opposed to being like ignorantly scared or something.
This is true, because like fear is a secondary emotion, it's masking something else. So like for me, I'm afraid of AI, and I'm afraid of ChatGPT, because it's like, oh, that's going to replace human connection, and that's so important to me, But in fact, like ever since the dawn of the internet, people have incorporated these tools that were once seen as cold and artificial, and like they were going to replace the real world, and made beautiful things with them. So I think AI is maybe another phase of this.
I think so. Like I'm just trying to imagine like so when I was like 14, I was teaching myself Visual Basic, and I was like, actually when I was in middle school, like, I was like one of those pretty early into it. So now I'm just trying to imagine, like, had I had that at my fingertips, where you could like literally have a few different screens of ChatGPT open and say, code me the database, code me the HTML website, write me a script, and make me 7 images for this. And then it's doing its thing, and you're right there. Or you might have like 2, like you could be like have 3 laptops in front of you, and you have like a team. Like you literally have an engineer, a professor. And again, with the new model, ChatGPT-4, it's giving you citations, like it's giving you footnotes. So it's not like you have to trust it. It'll literally tell you, this is where I pulled the information from. But you do have to check it, because sometimes it does like
make up stuff completely.
Yeah, I have caught it making up things.
But like counterpoint though, it's like ChatGPT is never going to argue with you. It's never going to, not quite do what you want. It's like a slave almost. It's like just doing your bidding. And don't you find that sometimes it's productive in human conversations to have someone who is just totally disagreeing with you, and then there's a debate there? Like ChatGPT, there's just some things that, human connection is irreplational.
So you can tell they call it prompting. Like if you build the prompt to tell GPT, you can tell it to be to escalate your argument, like to argue with you from any point of view you want, and escalate, or stay neutral, or as you're going, you're like, no, I'm practicing arguing, I'm practicing debating. And the GPT-4, sorry, I'm like,
no, like we're good.
GPT-4 has a voiceover plugin, so as soon as it's done, you can say, make me a voice prompt, and it'll send it off and come back to this British woman saying the script or whatever you want, really, really, really close to being non-distinguishable from
Man.
like it's fascinating, and it's fascinating. I don't know. It's kind of scary, but it's like really exciting.
It is exciting. Mark Hemmings, the local photographer, I interviewed him about some of this stuff because he was saying it is critical that we all learn about this.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, you're going to be left behind. Basically, this is such a seismic shift in the way that people learn, in the way that we write, in the way that we ask questions about like this kind of technology. As strange as it may seem to people, especially if they're not digital natives and they didn't grow up with even the internet, let alone AI kind of functions like this. It is for everything from photography to writing. Like I was actually talking to a local business owner who had to write an application to the food inspector to address concerns with their business, right? And this person was saying, I have ADHD. This was incredibly difficult for me to write. I was stuck on this for 3 weeks. I was stressing over it. I was going to have to close if I didn't figure out how to write this document. ChatGPT totally did it, and it passed. It worked. So it's like, this is a huge tool for people if you know how to use it correctly. I guess it is a mental barrier that I have, because I feel like that human touch, that human connection is so crucial. But why do I think that? You always have to interrogate these assumptions.
Do you know anything about the chess AI, that Deep Blue, I think it was called?
I've heard of Deep Blue. I've heard of people playing against it and winning, like brilliant chess prodigies in the 80s. Maybe like that's, my knowledge is limited, but my knowledge is limited too. But apparently when it came out, it was beating the pros, and then people got really scared and angry, I'm pretty sure, in the chess scene. But then they started doing human with AI partner, and I think that's like considered the best chess you can play now. Like the AI on itself, AI versus AI versus human, or human with an AI against another human with an AI, is like the most exciting way you can play chess. I think. I'm not a huge chess scene person, but that's what I remember hearing on podcast. And you're like learning more than you would from just playing against a human opponent. This kind of fits in with the shrimp ring track, actually.
Yeah, you're right.
About like freezing your brain and having a robot body instead. Like it kind of actually works with the song by Phil Clark.
Yeah. That's very cool. That's right.
Do you want to talk about something else other than robots, though? You have a whole list of questions. I'm looking over there.
That's okay. I mean, sometimes it just this conversations just go in a different direction. I'll just point out 2 more things, though.
Sure.
So also, like with the speed of AI, it's like, I think it took like I just saw this too. It took like 4 years for Facebook to get like 100 million users, and like a year for Snapchat to get like 100 million users, and like 2 weeks for ChatGPT to get 100 million users.
What do you think that's down to?
It's being implemented in so many. They're implementing it in so many devices, like in software and devices now. Like they released an API, so now OpenAI, like any company can write code and feed it into ChatGPT, so it can just be in anything you want it to be in now.
What's the benefit to the company to doing that? Just that it's just another selling feature for their product. It's ChatGPT enabled, like you mentioned, a browser that's.
Yeah, so actually you can load, Kayak, the booking service.
Yes.
So you can load in the Kayak ChatGPT plugin. And a good example I give to people is be like, can you check every Thursday to Sunday period for the rest of the year and find me the cheapest car rental? And just one by one, it'll go through and check the dates.
But is any of that BS, though? Because I remember reading about a court case in the U.S. where a lawyer, maybe it was a Canadian case actually, where a lawyer had used ChatGPT for a brief that he or she filed, and then the ChatGPT had just made up out of whole cloth precedents and cases, and the judge was like, what is this? And then the whole thing was unraveled, and it was clear that an AI had written it. So like, is some of that ever incorrect or fraudulent?
I would say, I have found dead links, yes. And I did find it making up information when I was checking financial statements, which was very, very bad. And with the lawyer thing I heard about, but I didn't look into it. So I wonder if they were using the 3.0 or 3.5 model or the 4.0 that would have given them footnotes to double check, because the unpaid one I don't think it gives you footnotes or references.
No, it just spits stuff out.
It just spits
no
it
references.
Out. Whereas the other version will literally point you to links and like papers you can verify yourself. So then it is up to you it'd be no different than an assistant handing you something and saying, this is where I got the information. And you know what I mean? Do you trust the assistant or not?
like not everyone is an extrovert, and not everybody is a writer, and like this is kind of filling gaps in terms of people who might be afraid to talk to other people and find out this kind of information, or might not have the resources to access it. It's an incredible learning tool. Like people have access to more information just with Google than we ever have before, but ChatGPT takes it to a whole other level because it's like interactive. And as you say, with the newer incarnation, it's allowing you to sort of go deeper with it, or as deep as you want.
Yeah.
So in a way, it's scary. It's not human. It's where is this all going? How smart can this thing become? Could it ever become smart enough to overthrow us in the robot wars that are coming for all of us?
Yeah.
Or is this a way of removing kind of the inequity? Not everyone can afford to go to an amazing school like UNB St. John, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, like if you can't pay tuition and you can't, have that lifestyle because of money or whatever, ChatGPT could actually help you learn.
It really could.
To be an evil genius.
to be a benevolent genius.
Yes, I hope benevolent. Although I don't know, like I like to think that we're still good at heart, and that we're going to find a way out of this mess that we've got ourselves in as a species. I do hope so. Like I hope so. I
think we could. Do you think there's a cause of it?
Oh, the mess? I don't know. The mess is so far reaching. Like, I don't know which mess. Are we talking climate? Are we talking like, I don't know. Climate's the most pressing one, I suppose.
Yeah.
Also, this kind of divisive political scene that we've seemingly got enmeshed in, where the sides don't talk to one another and everyone's really angry all the time. That's the other issue that I see.
Yeah.
I think we need to find ways to talk to each other. See, this is the human connection thing too. I think we need to find ways to talk to each other that are not insulting, that are not exclusionary, and where the two sides can listen with respect to opinions that they vehemently disagree with.
Yeah.
Whether it's right and left or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you have to disagree. Disagreeing is important. It feels uncomfortable for a lot of people. Unbelievably
uncomfortable because it's so people are so quick to say, you don't understand me, your opinion is delusional and wrong, and dismiss it. The other side is insane. When in fact there are smart people on both sides of the political spectrum on any sort of issue. There are people who believe something that's opposite to maybe what I believe that are not idiots, and that's what makes it fascinating. Yeah.
Do you think there's any the fear of disagreement? I find do you find there's a way to get past that? Like I noticed when I would be worried about being wrong, or when I was dealing with perfectionism, and then that would be a fear, like disagreement's kind of like against perfectionism, because really if you're perfect, no one will ever disagree with you. It helped me to notice the physical reactions of like heart rate increase, and like you're not noticing, but you're breathing a little shorter than normal. And then when that starts to happen, that part of your brain takes over that really, it's almost like you need to be able to recognize that you're not going to be able to make calculated decisions, or like your rationale's going to go out the window. And you don't even notice it happen, but maybe your heartbeat's gone up by like 20 beats per minute. Like
in an argument with somebody over a political event or something like that?
Yeah. And then it just kind of totally like takes over your mind a little bit. Even though you still feel like you're in control, you're actually...
And then you're yelling, or you're typing furiously on Facebook, trying to change their mind.
Yeah.
And it's not going to happen.
No.
I think the way out is to listen. Again, that is such a cliche, but...
it's hard to listen when it's text, though.
Yeah, that's why I don't argue with people on the internet ever. I find that is a hard and fast rule that I developed sometime, around my career that has served me really well. I will not argue with people on any social media platform, because it is a huge... It's a time suck. It's frustrating, and I don't think that anyone has ever had their mind changed by something like that. I think that kind of change comes from within. But often, when I've been talking to someone who I'm going, wow, I do not see where they're coming from on this. I really am having a difficult time understanding how they arrived at this opinion, how they identified with this particular thought process. Like, I can't understand it. I can't relate to it.
Okay.
But you got to keep your mouth shut. The more that you are engaging with what they're saying and legitimately trying to focus in on it and hear the emotion behind what they're saying too, the more you can relate. Empathy is huge. It is hugely important if you talk to people for a living. It's hugely important in any kind of lifestyle that you live. And I find people don't listen anymore. They just sort of are waiting to talk a lot of the time. You're actually listening very well to me now in this conversation. But that's kind of rare. to be honest. Most people are just trying to get their talking points out.
Yeah. Sorry, what was that?
Huh?
Well, no, but I completely agree. And okay. So don't argue with people. I agree with that. That's, even though sometimes it's difficult, because also what'll happen if you do start arguing, like let's say it's in a Facebook post or something, you kind of forget that you're arguing on a public platform, and it's not like in a DM or something. All of a sudden you're like, oh, wait a minute, I've been posting these replies and whatever. It's different if you DM the person, even then it's not. But how did you develop your relationship with social media? You have to post it out there for your job and just in general for information or expressing yourself. Do you take in the feedback and then choose not to interact with it? Or are there some posts you throw up there and just decide, I'm not even going to look at what people say to it?
Sometimes, yep. I mean, sometimes people have valuable criticisms that they express in the comments.
Yeah.
So I do tend to actually read, if it's a story that matters to me, what people say about it. Sometimes there are hundreds and hundreds of comments, so probably not all of them. But sometimes people read something that I've written, let's say, and they have a really well-reasoned take about why it's wrong, or why some approach that I took they perceive that it caused harm, let's say. Okay. Something even that was well-intentioned on my part may not have been received that way by everyone. So I don't publicly argue with them or have a public engagement with that, but I do take some of it on board. Other times people just haven't got it, or they haven't read it in some cases. One of the things about social media is that people just read the headline to a piece. Yeah. And sometimes they'll hate it based on the headline or what they think it's going to say. This happens all the time. Like, I feel like there should be some sort of rule on Facebook where you cannot comment unless you've actually clicked on the article and read it. But they haven't done that yet. Yeah,
I think that would be that's a good idea, something like that. Because it's so easy to make a clickbait headline or like a headline almost sound exactly opposite of what the content in the article.
And if you read it, it would answer any questions that you have or criticisms that you're then posting about. So it's kind of hard not to argue with some of those things. Like, you kind of want to say, just read it. Like, just read it and see what you think. Like, see if you still have the same opinion after you've read it till the end, and then we can talk. Yeah. But there's no point in doing that. That's how I've developed that kind of ethos of social media, that you post, you may read comments if it makes sense for you in that moment on that day. But as far as publicly sort of trying to refute criticism or, it's a losing battle. You could spend all day with that. I've seen people do that, and it destroys people. It destroys them emotionally. They feel really bothered by it. They take it all in, and it's heavy. And if that's going to be your whole gig, it's like writing stuff and putting it on the internet, to get bogged down in what everyone thinks about it, it would be your whole life spent that way. Yeah. And again, all those arguments increase your heart rate, which reduce your life, really. And when it all comes down to it, if you're going to be doing that for decades. Oh, man, I've had some moments, though, where I've been almost like you were talking about panic and that feeling of heart rate going up. Like, I'm like, they just don't understand it. I've been misunderstood here. And you really feel this physical need to respond, but letting go of that is so freeing. Yeah. And you just go outside and touch grass or something. Like, you know what? Did that matter really? Like, did it actually matter? Yeah. And it doesn't, like 9 times out of 10. And then you can just go on to the next thing. Yeah. And it enables you to do it. Yeah. And there's kind of that practice. I can't remember the exact measurement, but it's like, will it matter in 5 hours? Will it matter in 5 days? Will it matter in 5 weeks? Will it matter in 5 months? You can just ask yourself that question, and then you'll get to the point like, it's not even going to matter in 5 hours. So why do I care now? That is so true. Yeah. Yep. That's really interesting. Actually, that I had another thought, and it's just going to give me a second here if it can pop back into my head. I mean, we've got, a little bit of time here. Yeah, so if it comes back, then, does it matter? Does it really matter? Will it matter 5 minutes from now? What if it was the most important thought? It might have been. Ever. But you know what? That's okay. Yeah, okay. You'll think of another deep thought. Okay, speaking of deep thoughts, okay, so let's think about music for a second. Okay. I'm pretty satisfied with our AI social media conversation. Me too. We could doom scroll through that combo if we want to. I feel like we could have like a whole podcast about that. Absolutely, because there's a bunch of things that I'm just like, I don't want to bring that up because I learned a lot about ChatGPT just now. Just now? Oh, okay. Yeah, I feel like, well, I mean, I kind of have played around with it and experimented with it, but you brought up some things and I am kind of interested in finding out more about. Yeah, you should. And I'll just, one last thing I'll say is I've always thought for the last few years, actually learning about financing made me understand exponentials better. And exponentials, like our minds aren't wired for exponentials, yet digital technology is exponential. And so AI is exponential, but AI is coding the bug fixes to its own code. So it's a double exponential. So it's getting rapidly way more smarter.
It is itself making itself better. It is happening the way they said it would, and like some people feared it would. So I'm just saying that exponentials is like, people should take the time to read about how the human mind can't really understand exponentials, and so you have to always kind of be diligently thinking exponentially. That's all I have to say about that.
Wow.
Yeah. And if you look at someone like Elon Musk, when he's asked a question, you can almost see him like he talks in like orders of magnitude, which is an exponential measurement. So like people like, and I think he's on the spectrum. So I feel like maybe that's the path of like a human. I want to imagine some minds are like evolving to be exponential minds, where that's just like adding 10 plus 10, they just do 10 times 10. That's just how their mind thinks.
Or in the case of Twitter and Elon Musk, it's like 10 minus 10 exponentially forever. Like that thing is running into the ground under his leadership. But
he's kind of doing like an O'Doyle rules thing. Like he hit the banana peel and driving off the cliff maybe.
Yes, exactly.
But let's pretend it's old Elon, back when he was just making rockets and electric cars. Okay, let's think about music.
Okay.
So have you been into music for most, like, let's go all the way back to school, like high school. Were you like a music?
Very much so.
Very much so?
Yeah, music was my gateway into a life beyond Golden Grove Road, which was where I grew up. Mm-hmm. So I grew up on a dirt road, like on the east side. And when I was growing up, which wasn't that long ago, like I think we're around the same age, like I'm in my mid 30s and so are you. And anyway, until I was about 12, we didn't have the internet. So really growing up in the 90s in St. John was sort of like growing up in the 60s anywhere else. We were just playing in the woods, riding our bikes around, grew up really working class. My dad was a welder. My mom is a home sport worker. So, I mean, we didn't have a whole lot of access to the wider world. And that only came from me when I started going to shows uptown. So when I was about 15, I went to my first show. Actually, one of the very first shows that I ever went to was at a all ages venue called the Deep End on Prince William Street or Canterbury Street in the John Law Building, like right on the corner by St. John High.
Okay.
On the corner of Canterbury and Princess.
Mm-hmm.
Or Duke, sorry. And anyway, there was this all ages venue that didn't last very long there that Sam Blue ran. And Philip Clark, who was in Shrimp Ring that we played, was a solo act at that time called AV.
Okay.
And there was another local guy named Gary Flanagan who played that show. And it was like electronic music. There was dancing. Everyone was dressed in their coolest outfits. Mm-hmm. And it was my kind of introduction to a world where you could be something other than a rural kid growing up, with not a lot of access to the wider sphere. There was art happening, there was music happening, there was a social scene that I hadn't been part of really in my middle school, and it opened up a whole world to me.
Okay.
Yeah, like the album art, the clothes, the vibe.
Do you remember how you heard of that show?
It was probably a poster somewhere.
Okay.
Yeah, like even now, the poster wall on Germain Street by the Feel Good store was always a good spot. I mean, the thing is with the St. John music scene is that it really helps to know people who are involved with it. Even now, it's kind of like you don't hear about things until after the fact sometimes because you didn't know the person who was, spreading the word about it or playing it or whatever. Mm-hmm. But the more you kind of go out, the more you become in tune with that.
Yeah.
And that defined my whole high school career, for sure.
So seeing that poster defined your high school career?
Yeah, like hanging out in town and looking for things to do kind of became the MO. Mm-hmm. And usually, like my friends and I would say, all roads lead to Market Square.
Oh, yeah.
Because you could hang out there and not have to buy anything, and you still can do that because the library's there. And we'd all just eventually sort of meet in that spot. And now to this day, less so since the pandemic, to be honest, but if you hang out in Market Square long enough, you will run into someone and have a little chat, probably.
Cool.
But I mean, the music scene at that time, I don't know if it was as vibrant as it is now. Like, I see a lot happening in St. John music right now. People are recording more, shows are coming back, people really miss that. And the kids are all right, man. Like, there are a lot of really motivated, really talented young musicians in their teens and early 20s that are working really hard, So Amelia Bailey, who did First Listen Zine, she's, a total go-getter promoting stuff. I mean, like, it's amazing to see, because you always think the glory days were when you were growing up, but that's never true. There's always a new gen that's like doing it even better.
I agree. So, did you know local music existed when you saw this poster? Was this your introduction?
Not really. Okay. I mean, It's crazy how, like, at that age, because I had so little exposure to wider media, like, you basically had to buy a CD at Beats and Bytes or, you know, happen upon a live music event at the Arts Center or at this all ages venue, the Deep End or Taco Pica, to sort of know what music was even out there other than what they were playing on K100 in the wave. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but that was, you know, that was my music, or CMT on TV, like the country music channel. My parents always used to listen to that. So, like, it's funny how the local artists had the same profile for me as, like, world famous artists. So there was this girl in Fredericton, Cora Woolsey, who played under the name Vetch. And in my mind, she was the same as Ani DeFranco, a star. Cool. If I saw her, she was like, I would have kissed the ground she walked on. I was like, you know, when I was prepping for this, I was thinking about some of those defining artists, and she was definitely one. And she was just someone who's playing music in bars in Fredericton. Yeah. And she was a rock star. Yeah. To me, she is a rock star.
That's very cool.
Yeah.
I feel that way about a band called the Ditch Pigs from Moncton.
I've heard of them. They're a punk band.
Yeah.
They've played here before.
And they used to play Sussex where I grew up.
Yes.
And I think back to like there's an old punk band, All Gone Dead, who Sean Boyer was
Mike
in.
Thorley.
Yeah, Mike Thorley. Mm-hmm. They used to come to Sussex and play too. And but yeah, it's so we were booking shows and playing music too. We were like 16, 17, 18 when we got into it. And you mentioned today there's kids like knocking out of the park. And that's what I'm curious about too, is like that's why you need that kind of all age venue. You need that all age scene, and you need this weird form of like discovery that you came across. I came across too. Me and my buddy just saw a poster in Sussex and went to a punk show knowing nothing like at all about what was happening, and being like completely blown away by this hardcore punk. Like we just didn't even understand what was happening. It was so aggressive and fast, but it literally changed our lives in that very moment. Yep.
And people are dismissive of teens and 20-somethings in 2023, saying, oh, they're all on their phones. They're all just on TikTok. They're all just on Snapchat. Not the kids that I know. Like, I'm seeing some amazing all ages venues, even just pop-up stuff happening. And there's a momentum around live. You know, actually, a lot of the kids that I encounter are less interested in social media than their parents are. A lot of boomers are on Facebook constantly, and they're really immersed in that online world. The kids are savvy enough that they're reacting against that now.
Cool.
Yeah, which is really cool to see. So they're actually getting offline, and they're going back to the roots of live performance and art.
Cool. Well, I mean, who wants to hang out where their parents hang out?
I think that's part of it. They're rebelling against the status quo, just like teens have done since the dawn of time.
Forever.
So I'm trying to rebel against that too, because I find my world is extremely online some of these days. Yeah. So trying to move beyond that.
Yeah, the online. Yeah, I mean, it feels real, but it's not really. Like it's and it's so good at amplify. The whole business model is kind of built up to amplify it, like to get your attention. And the best way for your brain to get attention, or to get the attention from your brain, is to make you scared or panicked. That's just human evolution, the fear of flight thing. So their whole business model is kind of like built on a shaky foundation.
It's true. And it's sort of to be honest, I can be guilty of that as a reporter. The news industry can be guilty of that. Stories work when there is a component of fear or tension or action required of the listener or viewer, and I'm trying to get away from that. Not all of the stories that I write need to be about something that people should feel concerned, afraid, or in a negative way about. There can be questions asked and avenues explored, like ideas that you explore that don't have those kinds of emotional tenors, and that people are really starved for right now. So just as people want to get out into the world and see live music again, and safely, of course, because the pandemic is actually still going on. It actually still is. we're just in denial about it, like collectively, but it is still happening. But people are ready to kind of get back out. I'm not going to say after COVID, but with COVID still with us. Things have changed a lot over the past few years, but trying to just get back to a real, like that kind of real world interaction, I think, is a common theme.
Yeah. And so that's the thing about bringing that back to community radio, even like the airwaves, we only really hang out in St. John, these airwaves.
Very, very limited. So you know what? If you drive to Quispam, you can't really get it. Yeah. So I've been listening to Robert Selby's show, Vox Humana or whatever, or like some other local 107.3 amazing content that people put out on the airwaves here constantly. And I'm like, no, it's fading. It's static. Like, you get to like deep Milledgeville and it's gone. So.
But in some way it helps you. So people listening to this, I know this station, like we air Democracy Now! And different things like that, but like there's that disconnect where, like, I imagine if you could just flip the switch and all of a sudden the news and everything was focused or forced to be more focused on the local aspect because you just didn't have access to international information, I kind of wonder if like there'd be like a withdrawal and then everyone would just kind of have this like mask, like this something lifted from their eyes being like, oh yeah, it's actually the local world that I can talk and touch and communicate with.
In effect.
This is really what's the most important. Like the whole rest of the world is out there and I need to acknowledge it. But do I need to spend 90% of my time there and only 10% of my time in community? Maybe we've got it backwards.
I completely live my life that way and feel that way. My time is spent, my mental time and my physical time is spent locally.
Good.
But I know a lot of people who are caught up in world events and the big war in Ukraine, climate change, U.S. politics, geopolitics. And that, I mean, collective action on something like climate change won't be possible unless people pay attention to some of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I think that there's local level action that is equally important that you also have to be present for, because you won't even know the issues that are facing your community if you're not out in your community. So, there's something to that.
Yeah. And you just naturally kind of care more when it's affecting you or your family, like literally right there. So like if you want climate change, you can do things you can do actually here in your environment where you live, while also understanding that it's going to be different in other parts of the world.
Yeah, like make some sidewalks, bike lanes here in St. John. Like that's a really small scale local action that we could be taking that would encourage people to leave their cars behind and also become less unhealthy. That's a huge issue that we have here too, and it would change kind of St. John's profile when it comes to carbon emissions and be a great thing for the environment.
Yeah,
but we don't make those connections a lot of the time.
No,
it's kind of weird.
Well, when I moved here with as someone moving here with fresh eyes, and I was kind of cynical to St. John from Sussex, but I was living in Sussex, Fredericton, Montreal, back to Sussex. Came here for school, and then I didn't expect to stay here. But when I moved here, I was pretty cynical of St. John. And then I got here and I started to understand like the industrial side of things. And I was taking a course at MBCC that was going to line me up with an industrial job. So I understood what the wages were going to be. And I was like looking around like, man, this place has a ton of really fantastic jobs, no doubt about it. And then I was learning about how people, a lot of people live out in the valley and all that stuff. But it made me confused because I remember always thinking St. John is like, in my mind, this poor city. Like you can't get a job here, or like it's just not comfortable to work and live. And I'm like, the jobs, that doesn't seem to be true. Like there seems to be lots of jobs here that pay decent wages. And then I read this book called Happy City, and that whole point of that book was like transforming, like stop thinking about a city just economically and like make the city a happy place to live in, and then jobs and stuff will come. If you build it, they will come. I've read the book in a couple of years, so I'd have to like peruse it.
No, it's the whole livable cities concept. Yeah. And we are getting better at that. There's some change happening around just being able to walk places and how it's important to just be able to access green space, for example, uptown. Like there's a slow shift happening. Yeah, but I notice it now. I do know, like in the last couple of years, I notice it now, like with the electric buses here. The flex service is cool. I heard they're actually they have systems in place now where they can count the ridership. Like, I don't know if it's daily, but like they know when riders are getting on and off. So they can, instead of just guessing which routes are efficient or inefficient, they actually have the data now. So have you ever taken the bus here?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not too bad.
To UNB? Campus? Yeah.
Like this is one of the good routes. I'd like to see that kind of service everywhere.
Yeah.
I'd like a 4 a.m. service from where I live to my work.
Yeah, because you got to get pretty early.
I do. I'm an early riser, although not right now. I'm actually working a more less hostile to life schedule where I'm up at the same time as normal people. This is a summer thing. Yeah. It's a lot of fun. I'm staying up way past my bedtime tonight.
Oh yeah? Yeah. You don't host the show at all during the summer, right? You're doing articles?
Yeah, like we're doing this thing called Information Morning in the summer. My friends Khalil Akhtar and Colleen Kitsko-Gann are going to be hosting it. Cool. And my normal gig, for those who don't know, which is Information Morning St. John, is coming back after Labor Day. Cool. So this is fun. This is like a great opportunity to write for all platforms, to do some radio stories, and it's like, it feels kind of like the start of summer vacation.
Nice.
Yeah.
But it'll be kind of refreshing too, right? Kind of get you out of your the pattern you had before, which I'm sure you enjoyed. Yeah, because
it's not vacation. It's like I am working, but it is a change is as good as a rest, they say. So I'm writing stuff. I'm like out in community, talking to people, talking to you tonight. It's all it all feeds into the creative process because I still do see it that way. Like, I see it as art. All of it's art. It's writing. It's taking photos. It's not just work to me. It's a lifestyle.
Okay. The journalism is like an art.
Oh God, yeah. I mean, I don't know how you could see it any other way, because like filmmaking's an art, writing's an art, photography's an art, and that's all it is. You know, I don't come from a journalism background. I come from an English lit background. That was my degree, and from a zine making, you know, kind of like creative background. That was always my path, and so that's the attitude that I bring to journalism, not so much the classic J school view of it.
Okay.
And I know a lot of journalists like that, actually.
Cool.
You know, who have that kind of view of it. Some of the best journalists I know didn't study journalism in school. It's just, you know, came to it because they love the written word and they love stories.
Yeah. Cool. I would never thought about journalism as like from an artistic point of view.
Depends on how you do it.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Interesting.
That's why an AI can't fully replace it.
You can't get there.
I don't think so.
Not yet. But it's an exponential on an exponential, so who knows?
I know.
So, okay, so you didn't study journalism then, but you ended up in Montreal for a few years.
I did. I loved Montreal. So I went to Montreal in 2007 after I finished my degree at UNB.
Yeah.
Great school. I loved UNB, and McGill was great too in a very different way. It was great because it opened my mind to all of the big city opportunities. Like, you were there too. You know what it's like to walk down Duluth Street, the pedestrian only, gorgeous fountains and restaurants, and everything's vibrant, and there's street art and there's artist collectives. Like, it is a happening 24/7 nonstop. Like, New York, go away. You know, New York's amazing, but Montreal is a world city, and any other like Canadian city is struggling compared to Montreal in my view. So it's an awesome place to have a little rumspringa like the Amish have, you know, when they can go out into the world for a year and then they see it all and then they can decide whether they want to come back to being Amish.
Yeah.
That was what I had. Like, we had a little rumspringa in Montreal, and then I chose to come back. You know,
That's funny.
It is.
That's a great city to do that in, because that city is like, I actually haven't been to Europe, but I like feel like that's a little mini Europe inside of Canada.
It's
just Montreal.
Yeah, I mean, I've just been to France, but I'd say that that's true, because there's the language and culture aspect that I do think has a European flavor. Yeah, definitely, and it's close to New Brunswick. Actually, it's really easy to get to Montreal from New Brunswick.
Yeah, it's getting quicker and quicker the more they twin the highway.
Yeah, totally. Yeah,
and the metro, like the public transportation system there is like unmatched.
So like I went back, actually, it had been quite a while since I'd been there, but I went back with Patrick, my husband, and some pals to see Alt J at the Centre Bell.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it was incredible to sort of see how the city has changed and evolved, and, you know, what was the same and what was different. But would I go back? Like, in some bizarro universe, maybe, yeah, like I'd like to live there again, but I you know, I'm pretty rooted in place. Like, I'm pretty invested in seeing what happens to New Brunswick, and I think I've got to be around for that. I think I've got to be here.
Yeah, it feels like an awesome time to be in New Brunswick.
I would agree with that. Some people would disagree because, you know, housing crisis and
yeah. There's always issues, for sure.
There are, but we can help be part of the solution to those issues. So just being downers about it.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. I mean, yeah, you can educate yourself too. Like, there are people you can take some personal responsibility and figure out the path that will keep you here and happy. If that makes any sense.
Definitely. Part of that for me was learning to spend more time outside. You know, because we have a lot of outside here. If you haven't noticed, we're still, believe it or not, in New Brunswick, like 80% forest. Did you know that?
Wow, no, I wouldn't. No, I wouldn't.
That's a stat that blew my mind.
Forest.
80% of New Brunswick is still forest.
Wow.
As huge and sprawling as the Costco Mountain and all of the outlying, like, you know, all of these outlying areas, all these giant parking lots in Moncton. Nope, we're still 80% forest.
Wow.
And I didn't even explore any of that. Like, after there was childhood where we're running around in the ATV trails behind our house, but then there was a whole period where I didn't drive. I was living uptown. I never left the Southern Peninsula for like years and years. I didn't have a license, so I couldn't. I took the bus if I wanted to go anywhere, including the grocery store. So I was like walking everywhere, and I forgot that even Rockwood Park existed, let alone the Irving Nature Park.
Yeah,
I never went to those places because I didn't have the privilege to be mobile in that way. So getting a little older and being able to drive and all those things kind of helped me, you know, mentally and break free from some of the, you know, you get bored and then maybe you're a little self-destructive or something sometimes in your early 20s or whatever. But like, for me, nature kind of saved me from some of that.
Okay.
For sure.
That's really cool.
It is.
80%. Yes, and we have some great nature here. It's one of those things. I mean, when you live here, you just kind of take those things for granted, I guess.
Like, it's the woods.
Yeah.
What is there to do there? No, the answer is like just find your center.
Yeah.
That's where I find it.
Find your center.
I was at Bayshore Beach today. The tide was out so far. It looked like you could walk to Partridge Island. It looked like a puddle. Like it would look and it just went on and on and on all the way to the horizon. And there were these rocks there that you never see because the tide's, I never there when the tide's that far out. And there's these seals that were just howling on these rocks. They were barking like dogs. And it was just this cool moment. I was like,
Yeah.
you can't take that for granted. Like, we live by the ocean. It's a spectacular thing.
Yeah, even like when it's been foggy and I go outside and smell the salt air, I'm just like, cool. Yeah, I just want to remember, like, this isn't always... My friend was in town from Alberta, and his partner grew up in Alberta, so she'd never been near an ocean, really. Like, it just wasn't always near her. So, like, he was kind of living through her experiencing the ocean, right? As, like, she didn't take it for granted, right? Yeah, like the smells and the hydrate, like everything's kind of the moisture in the air and everything, so... I
met some Ukrainians who felt the same way about it because they were from landlocked, area, and they had just arrived here, and the reason why they came to St. John is because they saw it was on the coast. And when they got here, they were absolutely mind blown by it and couldn't get enough of it, and went every day to walk on the harbor passage. And just seeing that sort of enthusiasm for these things that we just walk past, and we're getting to work, it's the way to go. We get our head down on our phone. It's like, no, look around. There's a lot happening here.
Yeah. Jump on the bus, jump on the number 1 or the number 3, turn your cell phone off, and just like take the whole bus and just like hang out and look out the window.
I love this idea.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's worth it. It's good. Plus you can meditate, you can just chill. That's the best thing about public transit. You're not driving. You're not like worried about following any rules. You're not walking. So you're not worrying about crossing the street. You're just like sitting in this. And if it's busy, like if the bus is like full, but not uncomfortably full, it's just like this feeling of like community mixed with stress-free. And like, I don't know, it just feels really nice to me to just
Were you around
chill.
when the St. John Transit jingle about taking it easy when you take the bus was playing on St. John radio?
I don't
Yeah, there was this whole thing that was like, I've got a limo that's 40 feet long.
I do know that. Is that the same commercial?
Same one.
Okay.
Yeah, taking it easy when you take the bus.
Nice.
It's true.
I did jump on the electric bus once.
And?
It was awesome. It was like...
Quiet?
Yes, super quiet. There was like 8 of us, and everyone was talking. Like, they were hanging out in a group because the way the seats are kind of like a U shape. And everyone was like laughing about how quiet it was. And like a new person stepped on and was like, I haven't been on this bus before. And the one woman had obviously used the bus many times. She's like, welcome. And like gave the whole story.
Welcome to the bus.
Welcome to the electric bus. It was awesome.
Yeah, I took the comics the other day, the other month now, because it doesn't work with my work schedule really to get some places that I need to go. And I too was impressed. I was like, man, I wish that the service was like more amenable to where I actually need to be, which it will be. Like, I feel if people take that suggestion, hop on the bus just for fun. Yeah, we could get there.
Hop on a bus, and like, if you have a journal, bring your journal, or if you read a book, like, and then you're just comfortable and you're reading, or if you want to look at your phone, you can do that. But I would suggest not. Like, you just get to be in this moment where like.
Do you have a journal? Are you a journal person?
Well, this is my journal right here.
Oh my goodness, I have mine right here. I have 2 on me right now.
2 journals.
Actually, well, one is like work notebook. It's a little green notebook. It's got a bubble tea sticker on it, and then the other one I just got is like an owl flying. Cool. And this looks so much like a picnic bench. Like, if you leave it on a table, you're never going to see it. You're going to leave it there forever because it looks like wood.
Oh wow! Just
so
in.
It's camo basically. So I almost left it in Annapolis Royal, where I bought it at a little bookstore with my sister when I was visiting her in Nova Scotia. Cool. And I do what you say there. I just like sit either at a coffee shop or sometimes in a quiet moment on my lunch break, and just write what I am sort of seeing around me, conversations that I'm overhearing, thoughts that are passing through my mind. And I find that sometimes it's a really productive time for me where I can think of new ideas, either for work or new ways of thinking about stuff that's happening with me. Yeah.
Yeah. And one thing I completely agree. And one thing I noticed too, like with me, is like I would be writing my thoughts, Well, sometimes I would notice that I'm thinking I can't write as fast as I'm thinking. And I notice that as like a negative trait, because I'm like, man, is this just like thinking so fast? I'm not even like digesting my own information. But by writing it out, it's like you're slow down. You're just kind of like focused on the paper, and you could actually have a few little, like I'll make little like I'll put little dog ears in there when I have like a eureka moment, and then I'll like write eureka.
Is that cursive or printing? What are you using?
It's cursive.
Yeah, nice. Me too.
But sometimes I like go back and forth if my hand gets tired.
Yeah.
But I force myself to write in cursive.
It's good for the brain to write in cursive. I don't know. I always thought cursive was cool. I'm glad that I learned that skill when I was a kid.
Because they don't teach it anymore, I guess.
Apparently not. I've heard this rumor. I can't confirm because I don't have kids and I don't, I'm not in school, but I've heard that they have gotten rid of cursive handwriting in school.
It's been confirmed to me by teenagers. Nephews.
Well, because they can't read it. I actually went somewhere and I filled out a form to get a membership card at a local, establishment for something, and the teen employee who was working there could not read my address.
Wow.
She said, "What does it say?" I said, "It's my address." Yeah. So I mean, again, not good or bad, but it's like, I don't know. I found that mindfulness of making it kind of look good on the page too is helpful because it does slow you down.
Yeah, it does.
It's mindfulness.
Yeah, which is very important. Yeah. Yeah, I started doing this based on a recommendation. Mindful, like I was seeing a therapist, and she was guiding me through like kind of this how to get into mindfulness, and that was one of the practices. And also, so thinking any savvy kids who might be listening, when we learned cursive in school, but calligraphy was still like a rare skill. Like calligraphy, people who wrote professionally. Yeah, with the pen. Like we had a teacher in high school in Sussex who would do it, so he would hand write all of our diplomas. So all I'm saying now is if cursive isn't even a thing anymore, like those jobs, as few as there may be, are going to be they might pay really well.
That is the skill that AI is not, no. It definitely is going to be able to do calligraphy, unfortunately.
That skill is safe for the next 4 days until GPT figures it out.
Yeah. You talked about perfectionism and how it can be difficult to get out of your own head and just create something and get it out there. Journaling is actually a great antidote to that because no one is judging it. You're only doing that for yourself. And so the thought actually doesn't have to be profound, doesn't even have to make grammatical sense. And the writing can actually not be very good, visually and what you're actually in content-wise. It doesn't matter. It's just your journal.
Yeah.
It's a pressure-free environment.
It's funny you say that because one of the pages in this one, like I started to not write all the way across the page because it would get uncomfortable. And for the longest time, I told myself, no, you got to use the whole page.
Why?
Got to use the whole page. And then I was like, what am I doing? I'm not even going to reread it myself. Like I might as well just be comfortable while I'm writing. Yeah. So like since those days of going to shows at the deep end when I was 15 until now, on and off, I have kept a journal. I have a huge stack of them. Cool. Yeah, like a huge box of them in an upstairs room. I kind of vaguely hope someday they'll be valuable to posterity, but let's be real. There's a memoir in there, though, right? You got your book.
I wondered if there was something.
Written.
Well, I don't know. Is that totally solipsistic, though? Is that just like complete navel gazing to take your own journals and then write something? Maybe not. Maybe there'll be something crazy good in there, but I very much doubt it. I think that mainly it's like, I'm a Java Moose right now. I'm like gonna order a chai latte. Yeah, I'm on the bus.
It's the 80-20 rule, right? Like
some of it might be good.
80% of it, whatever, but you only need 20% to make that book.
It's true, and I could make myself look like a genius if I just chose the 20. Yeah, because like it's awash in a sea of garbage.
Awash in a sea of normalcy, but those little moments that poke out are the moments people want to know about.
You'll never know unless you write it down whether you have the 20% or not.
Yeah.
So maybe someday I'll go back and read.
Yeah. Or, just feed it into ChatGPT and let it write.
I think transcribing it would be the hardest part.
Yeah, could be. But, there's an app for that, though, so don't need to worry about that.
There's always an app for that.
We're almost out of time. It's 8:54.
We have 5 minutes.
Wow.
Do you want to go out on a song?
Sure, okay. Yeah, I wanted to ask you one more deep question.
Okay, let's go. Let's do it.
Okay, there's this question that I came across a few years ago that was... What would you... So, do you have a 10-year plan? Are you like a 5-year, 10-year plan type person?
No, I'm not. That's the short answer.
Well, maybe the question's not so great then. I was going to I was going to ask, like, if you had a 10-year plan, what would you do if you had to accomplish it in 6 months?
It would depend on what the plan was. Okay, something I really want to do someday is write a book. Mm-hmm. So if I had to accomplish that in 6 months, I would quit my job and I would do nothing but write for at least 4 or 5 hours every day. I would try to remove distraction and just get her done. Mm-hmm. That would be my plan to tackle something in a compressed time frame like that, is to sort of winnow out anything that's taking away from my goal. Mm-hmm. Real life doesn't actually work that way, though.
No.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was about to ask, do you think is that something you could actually do?
Oh, I would have incredible difficulty making a decision like that. You'd have to really be sure that whatever your plan was actually worth it. And I never have that kind of security, because half of the things that I've done that have made a lot of sense in the long term and that really worked for me were like total accidents. So I wouldn't have it would have to be a pretty spectacular plan that would like save the world for me to, feel that sure of myself that I would pursue it. I don't think I ever had that degree of certainty over what I'm doing at any given time. It's always kind of a mystery to me how things will turn out.
Yeah. Well, I think you kind of nailed it, because you said a lot of the things are like accidents that have worked out.
Yeah.
So if you have this 10-year plan that you're working towards, well, if you compress it into the 6 months, you kind of figure it out whether it's going to be a quick accident that leads to something or not. So maybe like if you're following this plan over years and years and years, you've made it a little too safe. So maybe you're not going to get those kind of little moments. Yeah.
I think that whole serendipitous discovery thing is a theme throughout my life anyway, and maybe a lot of New Brunswickers' lives, as we sort of, try to make it work in this place that doesn't always seem to want it to work for us.
Yeah.
Kind of the twists and turns take us. It's not where we plan to go, but somewhere really, really cool.
Yeah, I agree. Perfect ending. All right. Do you have a song? So I had a couple other songs from your list. I don't know if there's one that's...
Let's roll the dice.
Let's roll the dice. Okay. All right. So this has been the Radical Fabulatorium. I am your host, John Adamian. You've been listening to myself and Julia Wright.
What a pleasure to be with you.
Oh, pleasure's all mine.
Thank you.
Any parting words?
Be good to yourself.
Be good. Be good, everyone. Have a great night. I'm going to throw on Arm's Length. The tune... Second here.
By Kay Asleep.
Yes, Kay Asleep.
St. Johnner.
So I'm trying to multitask.
Very cool person.
Yes, okay. Kay Asleep. The song is called Arm's Length. Thank you for listening.